So we have Bryan coming on stage, and we have this theme as technology continues to advance, the line between digital and hands-on craftsmanship is blending. And tools have left their mark on design, and Bryan's exploring how tools have left their mark on design for centuries. And when we look at products as designers and engineers, we know instinctively how it was made. Whether that be like the repetitive mark of the CNC machine or the layered surface of a 3D printer, injection gate of a foam injection, whatever it might be. The question that we're asking today with Bryan is, are we seeing digital tools do the same thing? So Bryan is an ex-VP of design at Reebok and Converse, and he's been unleashing his creativity to the world with his own creative agency, Meg Bryan. So without further ado, Bryan, welcome to the stage.
Thanks, Dan.
How are you?
I'm doing very well today. I'm very, very excited. I just got to see an old friend of mine, E. Scott Morris, who's talking tomorrow. So I'm even more excited. But yeah, that's perfect setup. I don't have to set it up now. Hopefully today can be a little less about specific learning and more about maybe I can plant some seeds, start a conversation, and I would love I'll try to go through this quick so maybe we can have a discussion at the end, but I would honestly love to sort of hear what everybody thinks and continue the conversation later. So I'm just going to say to you, to Danny, to Shay, to everybody at Gravity Sketch, thank you so much for having me. I'm like ridiculously grateful to be a part of this.
Well, we are honored and really appreciative of you being here. I'm going to leave you to it, Bryan. I'll see you at the end for some Q&A.
So Dan set me up perfect. The discussion today that I want to start with everyone is called The Marks of the Tool on Design. And, you know, when Dan got in touch with me to talk about today, again, I wanted to come at this a little bit different than here's some training. I don't hold a candle to anybody that you're going to see over the next couple of days. But I do have an interesting business, and I get to think about things a bit more intentional and outside of the normal sort of corporate structure. So I would hopefully that I can share that with everybody. And I'm obsessed really with not only things, I'm obsessed with how things are made and why people make them. So I'll leave it there and I'll jump in, and I think this will hopefully make sense as we go. Quotes and thoughts mean a lot to me. I'm going to hit you with a few today of my favorite and my favorite people and the people that have inspired me. I'm going to start with John Barnbrook. He's my favorite graphic designer. I would say that I think, in my opinion, he's the best graphic designer in the world right now. He wrote my favorite book on graphic design. It's called David Bowie as a Catalog. It's actually the backbone of my agency's visual, so thank you for that. But I love this quote. Design's both a political and cultural force for change. Most designers choose not to think about the power it has. One, I think that's true because we're all very busy being, if you're a creative, an artist, a musician, a designer, if you do creativity for a living, it's most likely you're consumed with doing it, the thing. And it's nice sometimes to take a breath, take a minute, step back and think about why and how we do the thing. So hopefully, again, that's what today we'll do. So maybe just remember this one, and every once in a while, just sit back, find another creative that's doing it for a living and just talk about it. Think about it. It really is powerful what we do. And I'm going to get to this at the end. I think we have an amazing opportunity and a huge responsibility in front of all of us as creatives. So as Dan said, my name is Bryaan Cioffi. I'm a VP of design sort of for a living and a co-founder. I started my career at Converse and Nike in the very, very early 2000s. I joined as a designer, engineer, technologist, and I was doing specifically digital product creation and everything that meant. From what was the emerging field of 3D printing to computer, what were the new computer programs that we could use? How could we translate that to the factory? I'll fast forward you through my career there. I ended up having the amazing opportunity to run innovation. And then I became the creative director and got the most ridiculous chance to work for a brand that I loved ever since I was a little kid, to work with some truly special designers, developers, product managers, merchandisers, and I learned a ridiculous amount. I also got the really cool opportunity to meet and work with some of the most amazing designers at Nike as well, because Nike owns Converse. From there, I transitioned over to Reebok, where my wife and co-founder of the design agency still teases me about my title, but I was the VP of design, of innovation, of creative services. I also did a lot of work with the marketing team and the retail team and the strategy team, just kind of envisioning where the brand could go. And for the second time, I had the amazing opportunity to work with some of the most talented, amazing human beings I've ever met. Before I went to Reebok, everybody said to me that, the brand is always trying to figure itself out, but it's a collection of the best people in the whole world, and they're all right. I love my Reebok family quite a bit. And then I decided, because I saw some really interesting spaces in the market, to start a design agency, to do something a little bit different. And our thesis was that if you combine true logic and deep sort of almost private equity, hedge fund thinking, and demystify creativity. So can you take something that's very material and very esoteric and combine them and then explain it in ways that anybody can use it? Our thesis was, if you could do that, you could make a material change in the business of design. And I'll get to this later in the presentation, but that was almost 3 years ago, and it's been the most wild, amazing, and knock on wood, incredibly successful part of my career. And I couldn't, be more grateful that something in the universe has allowed me to do this. A bit more about our business. Our goal when we started was to decentralize creativity. I do think that sometimes design and creativity in general, if you're an artist, if you're a writer, if you're a musician, can be super gatekeepy. And that just really gives me the icks. I don't like that at all. I don't think that because people are developed creatively and they've figured out how to do it as a job, that makes you sort of any better or different than anybody else. This is our job. We're good at it. We've learned to do it really well. We want to decentralize that. And our mission is to make good design accessible. So we work with some of the biggest companies in the world. I've had the joy of working with Global Citizen. They're the biggest charity organization in the world, and Reebok, Cole Haan, Herman Miller, all the way down to some of the smallest that my friends run, like a amazing startup that my friend Luis runs called Deditos. Really, really everything in between, big, small, mid-level companies. We really want good design to be accessible for everybody. And we believe that good design and good people equal great product. And yeah, it's a really fun thing to be able to be an advocate for that. So that's a little bit about me. Maybe I'll jump in now to sort of my inspiration for this discussion and then go right into it. So when Dan and I started to talk about digital tools and tools, I'm a musician, so is my wife. We're both obsessed with guitar. I said to Dan quickly, it's interesting that you would talk about a digital tool, because all guitar players talk about their instrument. I don't know any guitar player that isn't obsessed with the thing, the guitar itself. And so many famous musicians say that there are songs in the guitar. And I was really inspired by that. And that led to this entire presentation. But this guitar, I think, epitomizes that. I think it's truly an example of a tool being more than a tool. This guitar's name is Greenie. It's a 1959 Gibson Les Paul. It's arguably the most important and famous guitar of all time. It was owned first by Peter Green, who came up with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, then got this guitar and founded Fleetwood Mac. He wrote Black Magic Woman on this. He wrote The Green Manalishi and a bunch of other amazing Fleetwood Mac songs. He then sold it to Gary Moore, who was in Skid Row, the Irish Skid Row, not the American Skid Row, who then founded Thin Lizzy. Gary wrote with Phil and the group the entire Black Rose album, and then went on to have amazing success, just as Gary Moore. Gary's one of the most amazing guitar players of all time. Gary sold it. Kirk Hammett from Metallica bought it, and now it's on tour. You can see Greenie every night at Metallica shows. Kirk has claimed that this guitar is never more than 10 feet away from him, and he basically cites it as the inspiration for the entire 72 Seasons album. So there is something going on with this guitar in general, but I do think that all of them have a very special place. And it was that in the way that we commune as creative musicians with our instruments. My wife and I own 45 or 46 now, and they all do a different thing. That was the inspiration for this whole story. So I'm going to tell you a story, not to entertain you, not to impress you, but maybe to just remind you of a few things. I'll get to those. I'm going to tell it to you in 3 parts, and I'm going to jump right in. The first part, keen viewers will see the meme here, but in the beginning there was design, and it wasn't just creativity. I think this is a space that human beings really have that makes humans unique. So I want to take a little bit of a moment, take a breath, help us think about what we do, and go back in history and maybe take an anthropological look at design and where it actually came from. The first one, and I did a lot of research on this, this is called the Genesis object. It's sort of let's call it the scholastically agreed upon first designed object. It's pre-human. It's an Acheulean hand axe. It's about 50,000 years old. It's in the Smithsonian. At some point, a pre-human was using a rock as a tool and decided that the rock wasn't a good enough tool. So they used the rock, and they were inspired by the rock, to hit another rock to make a better rock. At some crazy 50,000 year ago level, this started the journey that we're all on today as product designers. This was made by, necessity being kind of the mother of invention, but it's amazing that this is one of the steps we took to start to design our world around us. You can still see it. You can still hold it. It's a very material item. It's amazing. And I do think you can see the tool marks of the rock on this rock. And it reminds us that inspiration can come not from a product brief, not from a consumer, from things that are very, very base at our level as humans. And this really continues. So this Acheulean hand axe opened a crazy story for me. And I'm going to take us through a couple of these items. The idea of writing, the first font, the first character system is cuneiform, right? Like that's sometime in Mesopotamia or Sumeria, a group of scribes got together and started to keep records. And because they were on the base of the Nile, they had clay and they had reeds. So they would cut the reeds to make a scribing tool, and they could sort of press into the clay, and they could make the same character over and over again. And that became the first writing that humans ever did. It was specifically the shapes and we'll call them the letters and the characters, the words that they use, the sort of pictographs, were specifically shaped and inspired by the reed scribe itself. I thought that was really, really interesting. But it keeps happening. You see it in the Shang Dynasty in China. This is very widely accepted sort of knowledge that the first time calligraphy was used or humans wrote with a brush and ink was oracle bone script. This isn't Oracle Bone Script, it's the derivative of it. Oracle Bone Script was a system of characters that were put on bones to keep records in China. It was used because it was faster than carving like scrimshaw into the bone, and you could teach it. But the characters themselves derive from the way the brush interacts with the hand. And this beautiful art of writing was born because the tool was made first. And you see this develop all the way through China, all the way through Japan and its kanji, all the way today with writing with a scribe. And the way language has evolved and the way the written language has evolved, fonts, letters, etc., usually are derived from the implement that you're using to do it with. It's incredibly virtuous as a circle. It's inspiring itself in a circle. And it's really interesting all of the different ways that humans have created art and writing with the tool itself. Still happening. I did a bunch of research on this. Actually, interestingly, the first graffiti on train cars was back in the Civil War in the United States when Union soldiers would write messages on the train cars. That's fun. It's not as cool as the 60s and 70s in New York, though, and bombing trains. And there's a whole language that developed there. This is, if you don't know him, definitely look him up. Lenny Futura 2000, one of the most amazing graffiti artists in the world. He was really inspired by the can itself. This is some art that he did at Art Basel. The little sort of symbol motif he uses there is called the atom. That's specifically inspired by the top of a cap of a graffiti can, and the rest is the spray. So his medium and his actual device is the thing that inspires him so deeply, and he's created his entire visual language from that can. It's really cool. We all know the emoji. I didn't know where it came from, so I looked it up. A Japanese company called NTT Docomo had the most famous pager in the world called the Pocket Bell. And one of the engineers there used the actual code that delivered the alphanumeric scripts to the Pocket Bell to develop the first emoji set. This is actually the first emoji set on the right. So it's interesting that even when our written language continues to evolve into pictures, it's really inspired by the thing that was displaying the picture. It's completely mind-blowing, and it's a little hard to get your mind around, but it is really cool that people's creativity has opened up through the tool that they're using. And we keep seeing it. We'll go back again into history a bit. This was a really cool one. Again, as I told you, I'm a musician. I started to do some research on musical instruments, and during the Bronze Age, the artisans that were making armor out of bronze were using hammers to strike the actual metal to form it. And they were noticing the sounds that the metal would make. They noticed that the more they shaped it, the different sounds would come out of it, and they could actually tune the sounds. At some point, between Mesopotamia, Vietnam, and the Himalayas, craftsmen got a hold of it and turned them into ritual and religious items. These singing bowls on the right are Himalayan singing bowls. They're specifically formed out of the metal, and they're hammered into shape to have a specific voice. It's really cool here because you can still see the hammer marks on them. So the tool that shaped it, formed it, gave it life was actually the tool that inspired it. You still see it today. Zildjian is an amazing cymbal company. Every drummer knows what a Zildjian cymbal is. They're actually right down the street from my office in Massachusetts. The most amazing cymbals that Zildjian makes still bear the hammer mark on it. They can make it without it, but they choose to put it there as a subconscious reminder of where their specific instrument came from. This is a really interesting one as well. In the 1700s, a French lathe operator named Guillot, really anyone that's ever operated a lathe knows what a tool mark is on the item that you're turning down. He got obsessed with those tool marks, and instead of trying to take them off and sand them down, he wanted to highlight them. And he worked on building a new lathe, a Rose engine turning lathe, so that he could control it and make them much, much finer. Amazingly, he created, unknowingly, a jeweling technique and an anti-counterfeiting technique called guilloche, which on most bills in the world, when you look at that really fine, really interesting detail across the bills, that's guilloche machining. And if you have a beautiful watch or you have a beautiful piece of jewelry, this is on every watch face, every really high-end piece of jewelry, because it's just so incredibly hard to do that human beings see it as ridiculously valuable. So it's really cool that the tool itself inspired an entire technique, 2 techniques. We'll jump ahead a little bit more. This one's important for everybody on this call, even if you're not a designer. The first independent industrial designer was Christopher Dresser, a British welder. And he started to see that the things he was making in his workshop, that's not him on the left. I couldn't find a picture of him welding. But he could see that he could solve all these problems and make all these really incredible items that he could sell. And he could offer up to the companies he was working with to sell as beautiful items. This one on the right came from his family and was inspired by the welding that he did. You can see it there. You can see the stick and the bead. This is the Dresser toast rack. Coolest thing about this is you can still buy it from Alessi now. It's in the British Museum of Natural History. It's just really cool that, the first independent industrial designer, one of his first commercially available products was this toast rack inspired by his arc welding rig. You should look this guy up if you don't know him. He is completely mind-blowingly amazing. He's the rock star of industrial design for sure. This one's a fun one that I really, really love. And when I saw it in person, it completely blew my mind. Some of you may know, Gaudi built the first parametric model in his workshop, and he built it so that he could get into the 3D space. And basically what he did when he was commissioned to build the Colonial Gael Cathedral, he built a series of weights and hanging wires in his workshop upside down so he could continuously move the aperture and see what the design was doing in real time, and then hold it steady so he could calculate off how to build the cathedral. Just so happens that wires, when they hang, don't hang straight up and down, they hang in curves. That sort of system of curvature inspired him and his very, very unique architecture style. You can see the Colonial Gael here. More famously, you really see it in the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, which, interestingly, is still being built. I know the architects in Barcelona claimed it'll be done next year. We'll see. It's been this long. Anybody that hasn't been there really needs to go. It's a pilgrimage of design for sure. But when you see it, make sure you stop by the workshop and look at that first parametric model that's still on display there. And maybe take some inspiration from the fact that inspired this amazing work of architecture and art. We'll flash forward a little bit more. This one's one of my favorites. One of my favorite designers is Issey Miyake. The pleat machine is this amazing machine that Issey found and helped develop. And it basically puts pleats that can't be taken out into fabric. And when he saw what that was doing, the pleats itself, it really changed the way he thought about garments. Instead of cut and sew being this more static object, what if it could flow? And what if the pleats could allow this movement, like very natural human movement in a garment? And this pleating machine literally changed the direction of the garment industry forever. And you can still get Issey clothes. They're definitely my favorite pants. Pleats, pleats, pleats is like one of the coolest works of the collected art. But again, if you haven't seen Issey's work or tried it on, you definitely need to, because it's the most comfortable pant or shirt you're ever going to wear. And it came from that crazy machine. I've used this with my teams. The team and I were sort of tasked with reimagining the Chuck Taylor, and the archivist, the designers that worked on it, huge shout out to the whole crew. The developers that were working on it did an amazing job of looking to the history of how the shoe was made to inspire what the new one would look and feel like. One of the details on the new shoe is this wheeling mark on the foxing tape itself. You see it repeated throughout the shoe. It came specifically from a rubber wheel that you see on the left here that the craftsman in the factory would use to apply the rubber to the upper of the shoe. It was super inspirational. It had a very, very distinct fingerprint, and we wanted to tell that story, again, even subconsciously on the shoe as it came to market. It's one of those little ones that I think maybe people miss, but that little detail really sort of comes together at the end and makes a very thoughtful, holistic product. You see this a lot in footwear. I didn't work on this project, but for sure, the team that did the Adelet 22, I mean, let me say this to them. Nice job. I see you. Anybody that's run a 3D printer knows that that is the distinct telltale layers from any additive manufacturing or rapid prototyping machine. Really, really cool that the team gave this wink and nod to the tech. I really think that's a very, very special design, and I've always held it in very high regard. I think it's quite beautiful, and I think it's a cool way to talk about some tech without talking about tech. That one's really special. I also think this one's really special, and huge shout out to the whole On team. A very good friend of mine, Eric, was at least a big part of this. They probably weren't inspired specifically by the Webcaster 2 from Amazon, but the story that I read is that this technique, which any of us that are home hobbyists or special effects nuts know very well, is that you take a hot glue gun and you spray some air through the glue, and it pulls the hot glue and cools it, and you can make spider webs with it. The team at On saw that, and I don't know how they made this leap, but there's some brilliant, brilliant minds there. They built the most beautiful contraption I've ever seen in my entire life to spray the upper of a sneaker and attach that to a midsole. Really, really amazing, very current example of a tool inspiring a product. And it's just, very, very amazingly done. I use these examples because I think that sometimes as designers, we look at the thing we're designing. That's one way. You can look at the consumer. That's another way. But there's a really incredible red thread here, and this is the first red thread that I'll give, that human beings are very, very special. There's some amazing thing that happens with the connection of your hand to your brain that unlocks some magic that we can't describe and really is a ignition point for creativity. So think about that first red thread for a minute, really intentionally. Like, what we are using is influencing us a lot. I don't think we're intentional enough about that. And I'm going to come back here for this red thread. This is another quote. We're going to go to the part 2 here. This is my old boss and a mentor of mine, and truly one of the most creative and amazing footwear designers I've met. His name's Peter Hudson. He doesn't put pictures of himself online. Come on, Pete. This is, so you get his drawing of himself. But he always said to everybody that the hands will build what the mind cannot imagine. And he pushed on a lot of people in really cool ways. And he was the spark to build things and not sketch them and not draw them and not put them in CAD. And I can tell you for a fact, there are many, many, many famous designs at Nike and Converse that are not attributed to him, maybe directly, but came indirectly through this, the push to make and see what happens. And it gives you all these really amazing unintended results. They're sort of Bob Ross's happy accidents. So with that inspired me on my journey. I'll talk to you a bit about that. This is more about you than it is about me, but I want to talk about my journey, because if I can do something, for sure you can do it. I'm just an ordinary guy that is super lucky to be on a ride. But when I started my design agency, what I really wanted to do is take this sort of 360 experience I had from being an innovator and an engineer and a designer and a creative director and an executive, and start to figure out how I could give that back. And getting back into actual doing and making was really powerful for me. I love the how it started, how it's going meme. So that's what you get. But I started with all the tools that I knew. I own a toy company and I make a lot of action figures and toys as well. You can check that stuff out on Instagram if you want. So I'm very tactile and I'm very in the computer, and I like 3D printing. And that's kind of how it started. These things take a long time. And I was always exploring what I could do for my clients. How can I get them better, more resolved ideas quicker to keep their costs down? Remember, my goal was democratizing design, but how can you do that if you're charging absurd prices? So in sort of search of keeping prices down, and I was working with an Instagram influencer who is a young guy, right? Really, really famous, incredible at making content. He was so famous, he played in the NBA Celebrity All-Star game. He came to us and said, hey, I know that you work with artists and celebrities and hedge fund managers to create business plans for people, but you also do the thing. Would you help me build a company? Would you help me make my product? And of course, we said yes. We would show him CADs. He literally looked at us and he's like, what the hell is that? That's like what is it, a coloring book drawing of a sneaker and apparel? I need to see the real thing. Like, we're going to put real money up against this. I need to show my audience. So we started to explore. This is an amazing part about being your own agency. You're not incentivized by anything. You can use any tool. You can try anything. You can explore the darkest corners of the web to find things. And we started stumbling upon the first AI rendering systems and what Stable Diffusion was and what that would do. And it was very, very hard to use, and it was very clunky. This was like 17 or 18 months ago. But we did some very prehistoric, which is funny to say because it wasn't that long ago, prehistoric renderings of footwear that looked like photos. And he was like, okay, cool. Yes, I want that. We were able to get through the design process with him, but it triggered all these other things. It made the development process go much faster. It was much cheaper. And we started to repeat it with all of our clients. We don't show sketches or drawings to our clients anymore. We show them renderings. It's completely changed the way that I design, truly. I don't see myself as just a designer or a creative director anymore. I see myself working with tech in a different way. And let me explain that a little bit more. If this is how it started, this is how it's going. I have completely forced myself out of my comfort zone. I've forced myself off the table, off the programs that I love, like Rhino and Illustrator and Photoshop. I still use them. What I use now is a combination of tools to get my hands and mind working completely differently to get unexpected results. I'll be very honest, even though this is Gravity Sketch's platform, I think AI is something that really has been a force multiplier for my own creativity. The more I use it, the better I get at it, the more I use it. Again, that's the NVIDIA A100 chip. That thing is the backbone of a revolution for sure. And when you combine these things together, when you sketch on a different surface like an iPad, or you get in Gravity Sketch, I do 3D in Gravity Sketch. I'm also really good at Rhino, so I can do it there too. I like to sketch in Gravity Sketch. I like to do 2D in Gravity Sketch and then take that out and render it. I never know what it's going to give me, but I can sort of creative direct and drive that process as a sort of co-pilot to the process. And I can tell you, we've been doing some really, really fun, incredible design. And now, again, we keep a super low profile online. I like to make my work about the company. So if the company wants to talk about it, that's fine. It's their work. I work for them. But I can tell you, we have many, many, many products coming out that I'm incredibly proud of. They don't look like one person's hand anymore. They look like the company. And they're really fun and they're really creative. And I strive for that all the time. So it's been a force multiplier in my own life. So I'm not just a person that talks about it. I think that I try to be an evangelist for it. But the second red thread is I tell you my story not to impress you, because this is about you, not about me. I tell you this very humbly and very honestly. If I can do something, you can do it. I'm not the greatest designer. I'm not the greatest technologist. I'm just a normal dude. So if I can do it, everybody on this call listening to this can surely do it. So that's the second thread. Third thread's about the future and an opportunity that we all have. So yeah, man, the near future. The world is wild right now. I think that there have been wild times in history, but we're at kind of like a nexus of a lot of things. Just look at the headlines. Industry is a complete mixed bag. I don't think they know what to do with tech. I think creativity is a very hard thing for analysts to pin down. So people really don't know what to do with it. There is layoffs all over the place. There's small companies growing. There's big companies receding. There's companies figuring themselves out, companies struggling. It's all over the shop. AI swings day to day from it's a cool tool that can really help us to it's propping up the entire US stock market to it's a nuclear bomb that could wipe out humanity. It's everything, and it's all coming at us, and it changes every single day. There are no less than 2 major wars going on. We're in a crazy election cycle in the United States. This is the craziest season of humankind I've ever watched. But I think it's creating massive challenges that we all have to be aware of, but those challenges give us the most incredible opportunities. And that's really where I choose to focus, and I hope you focus on it as well. Here's a couple of things that I think we should be intentional and we should talk about. First, the job market. Also, I'm obsessed with like really horrifyingly bad clip art and memes. This is from LinkedIn. Like, come on, LinkedIn, do better. What the Christ is that? That's really terrible when you look at it and think about it. Like, sorry, I put this in your brain, but that's in your brain now. But yeah, man, the job market is weird. From AI resume writing to the systems that HR uses to even see a candidate. What can you do now to just be intentional about this and to stand out, to think more? There's a lot of people that are really good. What skills do you have? So this is an easy one, right? Like you're at a festival looking to upskill yourself. Bravo. Keep doing it. Don't run away from that. Every single thing you get scared of and that you see emerge, go learn, because you'll get better because someone else isn't learning it. And we all have to work to make a living. You got to get in the door first. So if you can put one more thing that you can do and one more thing that you've learned, that's how you do it. There's no secret. Like that's it. Just learn as much as you can. There's also a new consumer awareness and a demand. We all know what fast fashion is doing. We know what more products are doing. So we're designers. Go back to that first quote. We have a real hand in this. You have to be smart and be useful about what you're designing. The advice I would give you, and the thing I try to hold myself to, is don't do to do. Don't do for your own edification. Don't design stuff because you think it's cool. Don't design stuff to put on your own Instagram. Design stuff that's better for the consumer. Use the tools you have and the technology you have today to give people a better experience that they can use more. This disposable economy is not going to last. The world and industry just can't take it, and we owe better for our consumers that are buying the products that we're making. That one's real. The other thing is the homogenization of design. Like, wow, this is real, and I'm going to pick on the car industry for a minute, but this is every industry. This is footwear. This is consumer goods. This is home goods. This is apparel. This is like a glass of milk. When the Lamborghini Urus and all of Hyundai's SUVs look the exact same, we have to say like, wow, okay, what are we doing? I didn't put the Cybertruck on here. Okay, that's one that stands out. Neat. I'm not sure the Cybertruck isn't a meme though and a troll. It shows you can stand out. I'm not sure it's good. That's something else. But Cybertruck aside, look at what we're offering the consumer. We're offering them the same, just with badges on it. So this leaves us an incredible generational opportunity, right? The world is producing technology that human beings literally can't understand. We are at a time that is more impactful than the Industrial Revolution, all of the ages, the Bronze Age, the Stone Age, the invention of the wheel, the invention of the internet. All of that together does not equal where we are right now. A new intelligence is being born onto the planet that we live on, and we are going to have to share our home with it. We can use it and we can work with it to create incredible things for our consumers that, listen, like they deserve better. We know that we're making stuff to make stuff. How can we be smarter about that? And then how can we break the chain of just homogeny in design? I would say, I saw an amazing quote the other day that said, we need to strive to be better, not different. So I think the opportunity is to do better, to do more, to use and understand the tech we have, and to do it not just to be different, but to be better. That's the third red thread. So if we pull these all together, where am I going with all of this? I think you see it, but let me hit it really hard on its head. We have this opportunity, and I think we have the potential to get very stuck, scared, oriented on business, or just drive into this sort of like AI music, AI design, AI art, what it's doing right now. Don't look at it and laugh and say, oh, it's silly, it's not good. Yeah, well, in a year, it's going to be shockingly incredible. How do we learn how to work with it? How do we use these new tools? How do we use spatial computing and using hand gestures to design things? How can we push to learn from the things that we're doing to make better? You're all here at this global design festival. I give Gravity Sketch an incredible amount of respect and a huge, huge shout out, because this is something that's not easy to learn. It is definitely new, and it's a learning curve. And the people that are here today for sure understand what I'm saying. You don't want the easy path. You're not going to be the last dinosaur. Please, though, be intentional with that. Don't learn Gravity Sketch or AI to learn Gravity Sketch or learn AI. Learn it to do better. Learn it to do more. Here's my challenge. And I told you before about the most ridiculous icons online. Oh, I love the internet and I hate the internet. Look at this one. That's so bad. Who did that? I love it. If you did it and you're on this call, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. So here's your challenge. Learn these tools with the specific sort of intent. And I know I keep saying intent, but that's intentional. To unlock something in your own brain, to unlock your creativity, to find something new. Do the gesture in Gravity Sketch not to build a 3D model, but to find a new line and figure out how that can be better for your consumer. This one's maybe my second or third favorite quote of my whole life, and I use this a lot. Paul Arden was the creative director at Saatchi & Saatchi I know the people in the UK know. For the people in the US, basically Saatchi & Saatchi's like the Wieden & Kennedy of the UK. But he said, if you get stuck, draw with a different pen. Change your tools, it may free your thinking. Yes. I'm not going to add anything to that because that's one of the smartest things I've ever heard. So change your tools, right? You can make. That's amazing. Make. If you can make. If you can draw. If you can gravity sketch. Push and pull things around. Give yourself time. Fight for the space in your own org, or give your time space in your own creative process to do this. Also, commune with the new intelligence. There is something going on that we cannot understand. Even the people that write these programs don't understand where we're going. I'm not sure that AGI hasn't already happened, but when it does, we are all going to witness something incredible. And again, what this offers you and what you can do with this is superhuman. So learn it and do it, but do it for good. That's my challenge to you. This is my challenge to the team at Gravity Sketch, and to Shay and all of the developers, to the crew that's there today. You have an amazing opportunity. This is Neil Gershenfeld from MIT. I use hero very sparingly. Neil's one of the people who I would say his thinking is heroic to me. I have another friend at the Center for Bits and Atoms, Skylar Tibbetts, who also his thinking is heroic to me. These guys look at the world in a completely different way. But Neil says, give ordinary people the right tools and they will build you the most extraordinary things. True. All of us are just ordinary people. We are creatives and designers and artists and poets and musicians. But we're just ordinary people. With the right tools, though, we can become way more than that. And if we go back to that first quote, we have an incredible power. We can shape the world. We can shape culture. We can change conversations. We have a wild power to lead. And we do it through the things that we make and the things that we create. That's an incredible responsibility. So I would ask the tool makers to give us better tools, and I would ask all of us to do amazing things with them. And that's it. I hope you get it. I hope that wasn't too crazy. Thank you. Please hit me to continue this conversation. While it is I'll use this the last time today, intentional, we keep a very low profile. We don't have a big website. We're not flashy. I don't do the things I do, and my wife, Meg, does not do the things that she does to gain fame. We do it to help businesses, but you can find us. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, but email me directly. Get at our site. Please reach out. Even if you want to disagree with everything I said, that's cool. I like discourse. I like conversation, obviously. So yeah, I'll just say thank you again to the hosts of this. I'm incredibly grateful, and I hope you can take at least something away from that. So maybe if we have some questions or discussion, I would love to do that.
Wow, Bryan, thank you so much. It truly is significant to have you a part of this. And you know what, you've gone beyond examples of the marks of tools, but you've also explored where we are in the context of design history somewhat, and more so, how can we be positioned to take advantage of where we are, which is truly a call to action and truly inspirational. And just to pick up what Alton said in the messages in the chat there, you're inspiring us on how we can put our mark on history when we make our craft, which is really empowering. We're going to open out into 10 minutes of Q&A. We, as a closing tradition at the Around Festival, invite other speakers to come and ask questions. And I'm not going to waste any time and just welcome Jordan to the stage. Jordan Taylor of Viscorm. Thank you very much for joining us. We've talked a lot about AI through this conversation too. And thanks very much for taking the time out. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Jordan, on what you just heard. And do you have any questions for Bryan?
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. I loved the story around the rock, to use another rock to then make a better rock.
We did that.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. There's a lot of analogies you could bring to today's time with that same kind of just like practice of essentially like recycling practices to derive new ideas, which is very interesting to me. I guess a question I would maybe have, and maybe something you could think about, is I know you're talking a lot about things that are going to change in the future and things like that in order to kind of derive these new ideas. And I wonder, that's always a common question, but I wonder, in your opinion, what are some things that won't change that actually will kind of still be valuable, or I guess relevant in this new future with these new tools, right? Because good ideas are fundamentally good ideas to a degree, and they could have taken place 200 years ago now. But I'm wondering, yeah, like in your opinion, what are some like fundamental things that maybe students could kind of latch on to, or to kind of focus on, that's still not going to change?
I think it's a great question. You sort of answered it yourself, but I think that what's fundamentally not going to change for human beings is the desire to change our world. And problem solving, I don't think, is ever going to change. I think that that's an innately wonderful human gift. And no matter what the tool is, I think we can work with it and come up with solutions. So what I would focus the hardest on is not being so slavish to a specific tool, because it's going to change. Like, no one draws in Microsoft Word anymore. I was at maybe some people do. That's cool. We don't do word art. Like, I was doing a training yesterday with an amazing group of creatives, and we were talking about what the future looks like and what the future, or what the past was. When I started in footwear, we showed hand drawings with vellum over it for colorways. We filofaxed them to the factory.
Wow.
No one even uses a fax machine anymore. That's insane. You wouldn't. And we were talking about AI renderings of footwear. And again, I don't do anything but that now. 100% switch over. Show all my clients that. And while it is a bit of a learning curve, and the team's like, it's hard to control. I was like, think about it though. Think about going into a meeting with a retailer. You're in front of Mary from Foot Locker. You're not going to show them a drawing anymore. You're not going to show them Illustrator anymore. You can show them something different. So the meetings are still going to happen. The need to look and work through product and give feedback to it and make things better, all of that's still going to happen. The process is going to be the same. Humans are still going to want to have things. The tools will change. So all I would say is work really, really hard on your process. The way you think, the way you approach a problem, the way you break it down, but learn as you go. Learn new processes as you go, because they're always going to change.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the exact answer, but I do think the thing that's static, problems, and the way humans can solve them.
Right. No, totally. That's a great question. My talk kind of goes into this later a bit slightly. I'm wondering then, in your eyes, or just in general, how can people keep their sense of authorship when there's this like homogenous pool of just inspiration, right? Like, we all know the Pinterest.
It's hard.
It's like, I know it's extremely difficult, but I mean, what are some ways, like even me personally, I have a Walkman now. I don't really use my phone that much anymore. I'm just trying to like get back into the physical, right?
I'm one step from going back to the StarTAC, by the way.
Yeah.
If I didn't have clients, I would. No, this is a great one. And I talk about this a lot. I'm doing this with one of my companies now. The designers that work with me can attest to this. I started to do this when I was at Reebok. I really think that getting away from looking at the thing that you're designing as inspiration, and like the Pinterest thing, I've seen all those. Like your mood boards are cool. I've seen them all. If you really need that, do it for you. But don't get caught up in that. You're spending all that time doing that.
Yeah.
It's subconsciously influencing what you design. So for me, I don't make mood boards. I look at the consumer. I just try to get into the consumer's feed and look at what they're looking at. Totally. I try not to slavishly look at shoes. I can basically build you just about anything. I like to look at them. I like to feel them sort of for inspiration, but I try to get them away from me as quick as I can.
Yeah.
I try to find inspiration from more analog things, from discussion, from talking to people, from reading, from being outside. It's hard though. This is one that I don't have the answer for. especially the way AI works. It's an average of things. It's this group of trained images, right? Like we're gonna start to see the pieces there. I think you have to use it as just another tool in your toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
You have to use your pencil. You have to make stuff. You have to do CAD. You have to do AI. You got to put them all together and think of yourself. This is the biggest thing I would say. And I'm glad you brought this up because I think it's a transitional point.
Yeah.
I think the profession of design is going to change. And I think all creative professions, but I'll use design as the vector to the point.
Yeah.
You have to see yourself as a creative director, not a designer now. The act of design can be done quickly with the tools that you have. You got to see yourself and step back. I'm going to curate all these things. I'm going to get my idea and I'm going to give them to all these tools. I'm going to see what these tools give me back. Hopefully they're unexpected. I'm going to bring them all back together, condense them to an idea, then I'm going to give them forward. I think that can be a major mindset shift.
Yeah.
And I think that can be something that helps, if you're intentional about it, with the inspiration points, and you can really push forward there.
Totally. No, I totally agree. It's interesting, right? Like with these tools now, the output threshold from one person is just it's increased drastically. So
Jordan, we've had 55 clients. We're 2 now 3 people.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Like 10 years ago, that would have not made a lot of sense.
Not possible.
Yeah, not even possible. Which is extremely fascinating to me. I'm just looking at the chat here. Napkins. Yeah, I love this. Feels like I'm on Twitch. And like you guys are. This is cool. Okay, awesome. I guess we have time for one more question, real quick. Does it have to be like, or I guess like this is kind of like I always ask this question. Just I guess in general of like, what's your, I guess not your favorite tool, but well, actually no, I have a different question here. Okay, sorry. So I guess then with design becoming more generalized, I wouldn't say generalized, but accessible. With these tools, anyone quote unquote could be a like designer, not really, but you can now reach a fidelity. I would say that you said this really cool thing earlier about how it's traditionally been this like gatekeeping thing. I remember when I was in school, people wouldn't even want to share where they got the source images from. You kind of like working in like you're hiding like, I don't know. Yeah. So I'm curious to know like when these things become so accessible and you can go from paper to production quite literally, how do you see the consumer behavior even possibly changing? Are people's grandmas going to be designing their silverware in the future because they can just do it? I don't know. What do you?
I don't know. I did work on a lot of customization and personalization programs for Converse and Nike, like Nike ID. We had this thing called Converse Inc. where you could come into the store and basically worked with Brother to develop this system where you can take the sneaker, put it in, print whatever you want. So it's a canvas, it's Chuck Taylor, and you can take it. We had this exact discussion. It's full democratization of design. What we found was most people that aren't designers or creatives, some will do it, but they're not really sure about their own creativity and they don't do a strict process. So it doesn't, sometimes people stumble into something and it's amazing. Most times they don't. Our training to break down problems and problem solve usually shows itself as a more refined design. But what we found more than that was choice paralysis. And the idea that people that aren't designers for a living don't want to do design for a living. Maybe that will change, but they're like, you know what? I would like something designed and curated for me. I trust it more. I see what you've done. I like to, it's kind of like, think about it this way. Anybody can make art. You can go to the store right now and get paint and a canvas and you can just have at it.
Yeah.
Art is still super valuable because the ones that are very special, you know what that is. And I think that what I think is not so much that everyone will become a designer, which could be, that's fine. I think there's a different way to talk to the consumer about products. I think everybody missed Web3 because they think it's NFTs. It is not NFTs. Exactly. Web3 is a different way to commune with your consumer. The idea of a DAO, the idea of real time, better for this planet, not making shit and guessing if people are going to buy it or forcing it down your throat with marketing, to ask, what of these ones would you buy? How would you like this? The tools we have are actually enabling this now. They're good enough and at a high enough fidelity that you can make a decision and you can make a conversion decision. If this was this thing, would you buy it? We can start to do that and use new methods of make, smarter methods of make. That's where I think the true future is going to be. And the companies that can get their heads around that now are going to win, at least in this near term. Where it goes, I don't know. I'm excited for it. The work that you do is shocking and amazing. The work that all these companies are doing are brilliant. And I think that we know it's really cool because it's a perpetual engine. We're building the thing that's going to build itself. But I do think in the near term, the future of consumerism, it will be led by the companies that give better choice and do less harm.
Guys, I just want to say thank you so much. Both of you, Bryan, especially putting hard work into this session, and Jordan, we're going to see you later. So thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Bryan. It was nice meeting you as well.
It was nice to meet you as well.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.